what is it, dating within esport had its cons with it, and also as a coach, and also just as someone getting older, I felt like I wasn't getting a lot out of it. So I made sure to maintain distance from people in esports, and I usually dated friends of friends that I know outside of esports, or friends of friends of friends where it's beyond esports, and it is incredibly messy dating in esports.
Speaking of media, as a woman in this industry, every interview I do, there are always comments underneath being like, they fucked afterwards, or they obviously dated every single time. See, that's the crazy thing, right? But anyways, so the point is, it's very important, whether you're a woman or a male, to maintain that kind of professionalism, that line, so that no one can question your integrity when you're doing content. And I think that's also
just as an aside, just to make me happy, can people who are watching this chat now, anytime you see one of Loco's interviews, just always put in the comments, like, I bet they fucked up this. Like, you can tell by the way Loco smiled, just to make it funny, because it'll be a great throwback to this, and everyone will be like,
what?
Are they even
Wait,
together? What?
Are you guys telling me you guys never get that comment?
What?
Exactly.
Shocking.
Yeah, not as often as you, Lisa, but I still do get it. Especially when I interview TSM players. I get it all the time.
See, maybe the tension is actually sexual tension between you guys.
Maybe. Well, Lisa, then let me ask you this question. So let's say there is like a young female interviewer coming up. Like, would you give them the advice to not date a player, even though that would, what if it give her so much like skyrocket in terms of like actually getting to where she wants to get, in terms of being relevant in the scene? Like, if they need to grind it out, there's a huge chance they don't make it. Like, if it is like two consenting adults, like, is there a problem with it?
Well, so basically you're asking me, is it okay to sleep your way to the top?
No, I'm not.
I would say,
that's
you
not
are
what
asking that.
Here's the thing. Let's do both versions. Like, one, what do you think of that as a topic? Because obviously that is a real thing. Some people think it's a viable strategy as well, by the way, in life. Like, it clearly works in certain industries. One, you can give your thoughts on that. But I think he just means more like, even if you just literally just wanted a boyfriend, like, you're not literally going to sleep with your boss and go, you just wanted a boyfriend. But the problem is he's a pro player. Do you think that's a problem? So there's kind of two questions.
I mean, it kind of is. Well, okay, so the second question, I think it is an issue if you want to maintain a level of integrity as a journalist. You know, you kind of have to make a decision there. If you want to continue being a journalist that has a great reputation, very unbiased, then you can't make that decision to go date someone that you will interview, you know? But if you feel it's more important to pursue that relationship, don't be an interviewer or a journalist for a while. Date them, you know, find a job in something else, figure it out. And if that doesn't work out, go back to what you need to do. You know, you just have to decide. It's not some people want it all, but sometimes you just have to choose a lane or choose a path and follow that through. But it has to be a choice, I think. I don't know. You know, even in traditional sports, if there's a journalist that ever ends up dating a player, they lose their job. Like, that's just the way it is. And I think it's to maintain that integrity as a journalist. And that's something you have to know as a journalist going into it. That's just the way it is. So it's up to the person to make that decision. I don't think one way is wrong or the other way is wrong, but it is, I think you have to make that choice. Going back to the other question, sleeping way to the top is obviously very effective in some ways, but then if it isn't rewarding if what you're looking for is a meaningful, I guess, career. You know, once again, it's your decisions cause a certain chain reaction. You know, if you sleep with someone to the top, you make it up there, you didn't practice your craft, the content you create is not going to be as great. You know, like, it's just that's just what happens. Whereas if you want to actually be a great journalist and creating great content is what you want to do, you got to put in those hours. You got to do those interviews and not sleep your way through the top. So it's, once again, you just have to make that kind of decision, you know?
I think I have a different take on this one, Loco.
Okay.
So on the angle of, like, should women in esports, especially if they do like on-camera role, or for example, a role where you're going to interact with lots of players, will it affect like credibility, for example, or will people think of you differently if they know that you date another player who in their scene, like a teammate or player they play against, or even if it's a player in another esports game, they just know that you date within esports, right? The problem with that topic is, if you're just a guy, and especially if you've never thought this through, it's really easy to think to yourself, kind of like when you might think naively that it's like the example I gave earlier of a coach dating in the same field of people as his player, right? The problem in that scenario is it seems stupid that the coach should do it because you say to the coach, come on, dude, there's only like 5 girls who have to not date all of their girlfriends or their exes. Like, you can date anyone else, just don't date those people. Like, that's different. The reason why I actually think it's unreasonable to say to women, like, don't date anyone in esports is because if you look at how women in modern culture pick who they're going to date, they pick people who are in their environment, who are around them. That's who they're interacting with. That's who they're talking to. That's who the available pool of people they can choose from is. So if their life is esports and they're at esports events all the time and their friends are all in esports and every physical event they go to, except like the shops or something like that, is esports, that's just who's naturally going to be who they look at and who they potentially pick a partner, someone to just sleep with, whatever it might be. That's who they're going to pick from. So I don't necessarily think it's like a hard and fast rule. Like, I think it's reasonable that some of those people will pick them. I will say, though, if you do that, it probably is worth keeping in mind that some people will judge you for that. And some people, probably unfairly even, some people will think, actually, unfortunately, some people might think you're trying to slip your way to the top. Like, for example, even though, like, an interviewer dating a pro player doesn't in a direct fashion boost their career, because indirectly it might, like it helps increase their profile, they might get more interviews with that team. Some people will, unfortunately, unfairly assume you're trying to, like, boost your career, whereas maybe that really is just someone you want to have a relationship with. So I think it's one of those where it's a bit more, there's like more nuance than initially appears.
Okay.
Totally.
My 2 cents is it's incredibly hard for people in esports to date people outside of esports due to the kind of time spent and also just like what you talk about.
And it just makes you a weird person, you know, it's hard to relate to, right?
Yeah, what you talk about. So I think it's very natural that pro players date other females in the esports scene. I definitely don't think it's morally correct nor like right.
Wait a minute, that's not the right term.
Morally correct or right for people to serially date. Like when people are like, I think it's perfectly fine to have a relationship, but if it's like relationship after relationship after relationship in very quick succession, then that's something like I'll have an eye on, like, or like, what are you doing here? But if someone is having like a genuine long-term relationship with a pro player, or not even a pro player, anyone in esports as a female, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The dating to the top, the thing that you brought up, I think that's definitely something fucked up, and you're definitely using people, especially for esport pros who are very young and who've never had like relationships before. Like, I've seen so many cases of like girls in esports taking advantage of that and like serially dating like that.